They called it Slate 12 because nothing ever came back from IT and O drones, and O satellites, and O teams. Slate 12 was a boxed-in valley carved into the bones of a forgotten mountain range, its stone walls so steep they swallowed radio signals and chewed aircraft sensors to static. The maps marked it as geologically unstable. The military's internal briefings marked it as something worse, a high-probability loss zone. Every rescue attempt had failed. Every insertion had ended the same way. Silence, then wreckage. When the call came through at 0217 hours. No one in the command bunker said the words out loud, but everyone was thinking them. They're already dead. Colonel Marcus Hale stared at the screen, jaw locked, eyes burning red from 48 hours without sleep. The live feed showed a frozen snapshot of a downed MH-60 Black Hawk wedged against a rock face. Rotor blades snapped like bones. Inside that wreck were 6 survivors. Barely. Special Recon Team Echo had gone dark 2 days earlier after confirming the presence of a mobile missile array hidden deep inside Slate 12. They'd completed their mission, but on exfil, the valley bit back. A shoulder-fired missile had torn into their helo. The pilot crash-landed instead of exploding, a miracle bought with broken ribs and blood loss. Now, they were trapped. Enemy forces were converging, and the valley was waking up. Air support is a no-go. One of the analysts said quietly. Too narrow. Too hot. Drones? Hale asked, shot down in under 10 seconds. Slowly. So what you're saying is, no one survives Slate 12. The room stayed silent. Then a voice came through the speakers, low, calm, almost bored. That's outdated intel. Heads turned. The voice belonged to Captain Evelyn Ghost Rains, call sign Wraith, pilot of an A-10 Thunderbolt II that most people thought had been retired last year. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to exist. I've flown Slate 12, Ghost continued. Once. I survived. Hale narrowed his eyes. That mission was classified and marked as inconclusive. Ghost leaned back in her chair, boots crossed on the console, helmet resting beside her like an old friend. Only because command didn't like the answer. And the answer was? Hale asked. That Slate 12 doesn't kill aircraft, she said. It hunts hesitation. A murmur rippled through the room. Ghost stood, tall and steady, scars visible on her knuckles, eyes sharp with something that wasn't fear. Give me clearance, she said. I'll punch a hole through hell and keep it open long enough for your rescue birds to get out. Hale stared at her. You're asking to fly an A-10 into a valley that has a 100% kill rate. Ghost shrugged. Then I'll make it 99. Someone whispered, no one survives Slate 12. Ghost looked straight at them. They will. The A-10 screamed as it dropped beneath the cloud line, engines howling like an animal that refused to die. Ghost flew low, dangerously low, hugging the terrain, memorizing shadows, letting instinct do what computers couldn't. Her HUD flickered as the valley walls closed in, rock faces rising like jaws. Missile locks lit up her screen. She smiled. Come on, she muttered. I know you're there. The first missile launched from the ridge to her left, smoke trail slicing the air. Ghost rolled hard, flares bursting like artificial suns. The missile veered, confused, detonating against stone, but Slate 12 didn't fire, just 1.3 more followed. Ghost of. 10 took hits, shrapnel tearing into the left wing, alarm screaming. But she stayed steady, teeth clenched, hands calm on the controls. Command, she radioed. I'm in. You have 6 minutes. Send the birds. Negative. Highly shouted. You won't last 6. Ghost lined up her run, then make it count. She pulled the trigger. The GU-8 Avenger roared. The sound was not a gunshot. It was a declaration of war. The valley shook as depleted uranium rounds tore through enemy positions. Missile launchers evaporating in a fire and dust point one by one. Threats disappeared. Ghost climbed just enough to see the crash site. Smoke. Movement. Friendly signals blinking weak but alive. Echo team, she called. This is Ghost. Stay down. You're not alone. The reply crackled. Broken but real. Did command send an angel? Ghost laughed. Nah, just a pissed-off pilot. She banked hard as another missile launched. Closer this time. Too close. Her countermeasures fired, but the missile adjusted, locked. Command, she said calmly. I'm not going to outrun this one. Hale's voice broke. Ghost eject. That's an order. She looked at the valley, at the rescue helicopters just breaching the ridge line, rotors slicing air, flying into hell because she'd cleared the path. If I eject, she said softly, the missile retargets. Silence. The missile screamed closer. Ghost steadied her A-10, aligning herself directly between the missile and the rescue birds. For what it's worth, she added, tell them, no one survives Slate 12 because no one ever stayed behind. The missile struck, the sky turned white. The explosion should have ended everything. That was the rule of Slate 12. The fire swallowed the sky where Ghost's A-10 had been, a blinding bloom of white and orange that slammed against the valley walls and echoed like thunder rolling through stone. For half a second, every sensor went dead. Every radio went silent. Inside the lead rescue helicopter, the pilot froze. No, 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 he whispered. Colonel Hale watched the screen go blank and felt something heavy settle into his chest. He had sent pilots into danger before. He had signed casualty reports. But this felt different. Ghost hadn't been just another asset. She had been the shield. Echo team, Hale said into the mic, voice tight. Status. Static. Then, faintly, we're moving. The feed flickered back. The missile that should have torn the rescue birds apart had detonated early. Its guidance broken when Ghost's A-10 absorbed the impact and exploded ahead of them. The shockwave rocked the helicopters, alarms blaring, but they were still flying, still alive. Lead bird, the co-pilot shouted. We're through. Landing zone in sight. They dropped fast, skids scraping rock as the door gunners opened fire, suppressing the last scattered enemy fighters. Smoke and dust filled the air as Echo teams stumbled toward the helicopters. Bloodied, exhausted, but alive. One by one, they were pulled aboard. 0.6 souls, 0.6 lives that Slate 12 had failed to take. As the helicopters clawed back into the air, Hale leaned forward, scanning the valley for any sign, any trace of Ghost. There was nothing, just fire fading into smoke. No one survives Slate 12. Someone whispered behind him. Hale closed his eyes. 3 days later, the briefing room was full. Full. Dress uniforms lined the walls. Medals rested in velvet cases. A folded flag sat on the table at the front of the room. Captain Evelyn Rains, Ghost, had been officially listed as K. An O body recovered, an O wreckage identifiable. Just a name added to a wall. Hale stood at the podium, his voice steady but heavy. She knew the risk, he said. She understood the valley, and she made the choice to stay. Echo team sat together in the front row. One of them, Staff Sergeant Cole, clenched his jaw so hard it trembled. She didn't stay behind, he said quietly. She stood in front. The room went silent. Hale nodded once. Because of her, 6 Americans came home. The flag was presented, salutes were rendered, and Ghost became a legend. But Slate 12 wasn't finished. 5 nights later, in a hangar far from the headlines, a maintenance crew stared at something impossible, and in Thunderbolt 2. Burned, torn, barely recognizable, sat on the tarmac. Engines cold, paint scorched black, but intact. The crew chief swallowed. Sir, this tail number. Colonel Hale arrived minutes later, breath caught in his throat. The IT was hers. No parachute had been found. No ejection recorded. The blast had knocked her systems offline, thrown her aircraft deep into a hidden ravine, one shielded from sensors, from satellites, from everything Slate 12 used to kill. She had crash-landed and survived. Ghost was found 2 miles from the wreckage, dehydrated, wounded, unconscious, but breathing. When she woke, the first thing she said was, "Did they get out?" Hale smiled, eyes wet. "All 6. She closed her eyes again. "Worth it." Weeks later, the mission was declassified. Partially, Slate 12 was marked neutralized. The missile array destroyed. The valley, finally silent. Ghost declined interviews, declined ceremonies. She returned to flight status with one condition. No press, no speeches, no statues. They don't need my face, she said. They need the story. So the story was told quietly in briefing rooms, in cockpits, in whispers between pilots before dangerous runs, in One Survives Slate 12, except the one someone else chose to save. After her recovery, Ghost didn't return to the same world she had left. Pilots stopped joking when she entered a room. Young lieutenants straightened their backs without knowing why. Even veterans, men and women who had flown through fire, looked at her with a quiet respect usually reserved for memorial walls. She hated it. "You'd think I walked out of the grave," she muttered once, adjusting her flight gloves. One of the crew chiefs looked up and said softly, "Ma'am, you kind of did." Ghost never spoke about the moment the missile hit. Not about the heat or the pressure or the instant when the sky disappeared and instinct took over. But sometimes, late at night, she would sit alone on the hangar steps and listen to the wind, eyes distant, replaying the last radio call in her head. Did they get out? That question haunted her more than the explosion ever could. Echo Team visited her once, unannounced. They didn't bring medals or speeches. They brought a folded patch from their destroyed helicopter, edges burned, symbol barely visible. "We carried this out because of you," Staff Sergeant Cole said, placing it in her hand. "Slate 12 tried to bury us. You said no." Ghost stared at the patch for a long moment, then nodded. "You don't owe me anything." Cole shook his head. "No, but history does." Slate 12 was eventually reopened, not for combat, but for analysis. Analysts confirmed what Ghost had always known. The Valley didn't kill through strength alone. It killed through fear, through pilots pulling up too soon, through hesitation measured in seconds. Ghost had never hesitated. Months later, during a training flight, a young pilot's voice cracked over the radio. "Missile warning." Panic rising. Ghost slid into formation beside him, calm as ever. "Breathe," she said. "Slate 12 isn't here." The pilot steadied. The threat passed, and somewhere far away, a valley of stone remained silent, defeated not by bombs, but by a woman who chose to take the hit so others wouldn't have to. And One Survives Slate 12, except those carried home by courage.